Go.
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I also want to offer a very special thanks to Marcia at Gallery 37 for hosting and displaying the work that I've been working on for this past year. It's truly an honor, and you've made me feel very special. So thank you so much. You're so welcome. The work that you see presented today is part of my 2017 Individual Artist Fellowship Grant. It's a grant that I received from the Delaware Division of the Arts, with the ultimate funding coming through the National Endowments for the Arts. The National Endowment for the Arts gives money to each state every year, and the state has to decide how they want to use it, and Delaware happens to be very strong supporters of their artists. So anyway, that's what I did this year. That's where the money came from, and that's where what someone tonight actually said that gave me the license to be able to experiment and learn and make mistakes, and I surely did that. I wouldn't have, under normal circumstances, I would have never taken the time to discover the kinds of things that I discovered, not only about my work, but about myself. The fellowship, the presentation is called Constructed Objects, 300/10,000, Polymer, Mixed Metals, and Steel. There's a reason for that title, and as I describe what I'm going to tell you now, you'll understand where the title comes from. A little background about me: I have a Bachelor of Architecture from Carnegie Mellon University, and I've been practicing architecture for 35 years. So I have always been kind of in the design and construction side of things, but never at a real small scale. It's always been very large scale, things that are where the backdrop is the environment, and not necessarily the interiors, or in my original work, the human body. With me saying that I've practiced architecture for 35 years, but I've been working with polymer for 13 years, and I have been doing welding, both MIG and TIG welding, for 2.5 years. I started with MIG welding. MIG welding is actually, MIG stands for metal inert gas, and MIG welding is usually done for very large scale, more structural things. And then there's TIG welding, which is tungsten inert gas, and it is done with a tungsten electrode, and it is for more fine work. MIG welding, the welding wire comes out of a gun and you squeeze a trigger. TIG welding is actually done with an electrode and a filler rod, and then you also are controlling all the electricity with your foot. So I always say, all I need is something to do with my other foot, and I could be like a little dancer, because it's quite an intimidating process, quite frankly. So I've only been doing that for 2.5 years, and so let's get to the name of the show, being Constructed Objects 300 versus 10,000. Polymer is workable at room temperature, and it is cured at 300 degrees. Metal actually does not become fluid and workable until 10,000 degrees. So putting two materials that are workable at two very different temperatures is quite a challenge. You have to really think about the sequence of which you're going to put something together, the construction of the element. And because if you try to weld after you've got some polymer attached, it's going to just melt away. Fortunately, I knew that, so I didn't ever make that mistake. I made lots of mistakes, but that wasn't one of them. And so really what that is that polymer and steel have what I like to call is a different coefficient of thermal expansion. They expand and contract at much different rates when they're heated and cooled. And so what I drew upon through my architectural background was the notion of expansion joint. Expansion joints allow two different materials to expand and contract at different rates. So the goal, or my challenge, that I sort of put upon myself for 2017 was to explore methods of combining polymer clay and mixed metals, and using real objects to discover and develop a process for that construction. So that's kind of what everything you see here is about. We've got wearables that are in the small room here, and those are all much different work than people are used to me having done. I've been only doing polymer for years, but the combination of the metal and the steel is something that's new. All of the work that is in the small gallery is all riveted connections. There are no welded connections on there. And the riveting actually was something that I discovered, had always wanted to know how to do. And rather than starting on a small scale with learning how to do riveting, I actually decided and wound up taking a class as part of the funding that I got. I took a blacksmithing class and learned how to build your fire, keep your fire going, and learned how to hammer and manipulate metal, heating it and then forging it. And I had a blast doing it. And my compadre in crime for doing that, I don't know if she's here. Tony, are you here? Tony might not be here. Tony and I welded together, but Tony and I also took blacksmithing classes together. And it was there at a very large scale that I learned how to rivet. But we were talking, 1/4-inch diameter steel riveting as opposed to 16th diameter steel riveting. And that's the other thing. All of the work that you see represented is also with steel, stainless steel, and brass. There is no sterling silver in my work. I've never been a big sterling silver fan. So anyway, the major pieces in the presentation that I have here is the major one is behind you guys here. So the major piece is called the recital.